How does a story actually change the world? Not with armies or laws or empires, but with whispers. Whispers that turn into conversations. Conversations that become convictions. Convictions that fuel a movement. And a movement that reshapes the course of history, not from the top down, but from the ground up. In the words of Psalm 78, verse 4, "We will not hide them from their children. We will tell the next generation the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, His power, and the wonders He has done." That's exactly what the earliest followers of Jesus did. They didn't have printing presses, TikTok, or televised broadcasts. What they had was the raw power of story. We're in an era with no printing press, no radio, no internet. And yet, a small band of followers took on an impossible mission to ensure that the story of a crucified man from a rural backwater of the Roman Empire didn't just survive, but spread to the ends of the earth. They weren't armed with swords, but with words. They didn't carry shields, but carried memories. Memories of a man who claimed to be the Son of God, and who they swore they had seen alive after his execution. Acts 2, verse 32. The year is roughly 30 AD. Jerusalem is buzzing with Passover crowds when Jesus of Nazareth, teacher, miracle worker, and claimed Messiah, is crucified outside the city walls. Crucifixion was Rome's ultimate statement. This is what happens to rebels. Philippians 2, verse 8 says, "He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross." For his followers, this was more than loss. It was devastation. They fled in fear. Mark 14, verse 50. Locked themselves behind closed doors. John 20, verse 19. And braced for their movement to disappear like countless others before it. But something happened that flipped despair into unstoppable joy. They saw him alive. Luke 24, verses 36 to 49. That moment lit a fire that would burn through centuries. They didn't launch an armed revolt. They started telling the story, quietly at first, like an ember hidden from the wind, until the wind of the Spirit, Acts 2, verses 1 through 4, fanned it into a blaze. The first members of this network weren't priests, politicians, or scholars. They were fishermen, Matthew 4, verses 18 to 19, a tax collector, Matthew 9, verse 9, women who had stood by him even at the cross, Luke 8, verses 345, 1 to 3, John 20, verse 18. Their mission wasn't organized in a boardroom. It was birthed in encounters. They remembered his voice. They remembered the way he calmed storms, Mark 4, verse 39. The way he touched lepers without flinching, Mark 1, verse 41. The way he spoke in parables that stuck in the mind like seeds in soil, Matthew 13, verses 3 to 9. They gathered in homes, Acts 2, verse 46, at dinner tables, in marketplace, retelling these moments again and again. Deuteronomy 6, verses 6 to 7, had taught them to talk about God's words when you sit at home and when you walk along the road. Now they were doing that with the words and deeds of Jesus. At the center of it all was the passion narrative, the arrest, trial, crucifixion, and resurrection. This was their anchor, their proof, and their hope. Today, we worry that if we don't write something down, it'll be forgotten. But in first century Jewish culture, oral tradition was a finely honed skill. Children memorized psalms. Rabbis and disciples could recite entire books of the law. Psalm 119 verse 11 says, "I have hidden your word in my heart." Jesus taught with built-in memory aids, short, punchy sayings, "Blessed are the meek," stories with vivid images, a mustard seed, a lost sheep, a pearl of great price, and memorable twists. These were passed on in what scholars call informal but controlled tradition. The community freely retold them, but eyewitnesses kept the details accurate. Luke 1, verses 2 to 3. Imagine a network of designated memory keepers, ensuring the story stayed true. This was their internet, living, breathing, and mobile. The apostles were the first servers, but every new believer became a new node in the network. The message didn't stay in Jerusalem. It traveled along Roman trade routes, across the Mediterranean, and into the heart of cities like Antioch, Corinth, and eventually Rome itself. When Paul arrived in a new place, he didn't distribute pamphlets. He told the story. In 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 to 4, he says, "For what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance." This was his way of saying, I'm passing the torch exactly as it was handed to me. To Jews, the message was framed as prophecy fulfilled, Acts 13, verses 32 to 33. To Greeks, it was presented as the answer to life's ultimate questions, Acts 17, verses 22 to 31. But the heartbeat was always the same. Jesus lived, died, and rose again. House churches became new hubs, Romans 16, verse 5. Entire families believed, and their homes became mini mission stations. The gospel moved person to person, table to table, city to city, without headquarters, without budget, without a central planner. For decades, the movement relied on the spoken word. Paul's letters in the 50s AD already assume people know the oral stories. 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 15. Around 70 AD, Mark became the first to arrange these oral pearls into a written string. Matthew and Luke gathered even more, and John filled in unique details. These weren't made-up legends, they were crystallized memories. Luke says his gospel came from eyewitnesses and servants of the word, so that you may know the certainty of the things you have been taught. Luke 1, verses 2 through 4. As the eyewitness generation passed away, these writings became the permanent record, yet they still carried the rhythm and flavor of stories told aloud. The secret to how Jesus became famous wasn't a secret at all. It was faithful storytelling. From the shores of Galilee to the streets of Rome, ordinary people obeyed the command of Mark 16, verse 15. Go into all the world and proclaim the gospel to the whole creation. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They spoke, and the story they carried was so compelling that it could leap from mouth to mouth, heart to heart, and century to century until it reached us. Now, the torch is in our hands. We are the next storytellers on this network, and someone in your life might only hear the gospel if you are the one who tells it. A story can cross oceans, generations, and cultures without losing its power. What story has transformed your life the way the gospel transformed theirs? Share it in the comments, and remember, someone needs to hear it. And don't forget to like and subscribe.